Hi, Gold viewers. My name is Mpumi Phillips. I am a creative manager for Share Publishing, and I'm also a music supervisor. So that means I basically place music on film and television, based out in South Africa, but also work quite a lot within East Africa. Um, Thank you for having me. I guess I would say slightly above average. Definitely no silver spoon. I would have loved for that, but not. But I do feel that I was a little bit more privileged than the average African child. I mean, at 6 years old, I moved to the U.S. to live. My mother was already there, had been there for about a year. So I moved to go live with her. So at least being able to, be exposed to, different culture, different country. And I grew up there. So, but we weren't rich by no means. We still, we're an average family, a middle class family who, survived, you know. So I guess that's what I would say. I would more of an average, a little bit above average in terms of exposure, but not financial. I think for me, it was being a foreigner in another land and also coming home and still feeling like a foreigner in your own land. It's just like I always felt like I was always in the middle. I was too African to be American, too American to be African. So you always felt like you didn't really have a place to really fit in. So that was the difficult part where you grew up, especially in your fundamental years where you're always looking for a place to belong, where you didn't really feel like you belong somewhere. That would have been the biggest challenge for me. I think I was kind of born into this industry a little bit. My father's an actor, so I was always around the creative space. Never thought growing up at all that I would ever, be within the creative industries at all. I remember growing up, I wanted, I always toyed between being a psychologist or a lawyer, because I like to argue a lot. So everybody thought I should be a lawyer. But it was never my intention to be in the industry, so to speak. And I just kind of fell into it with my first job. And I was still in high school, and I was working for a nonprofit organization that was founded by actors in the film and television industry in the US. And we would do like film premieres and things like that to kind of raise funds for organizations in South Africa. So I kind of fell into it. I had the options of going very corporate, and at that, crossroad, I took that path of the music industry and or the creative industry. And I think once you take that path, I mean, I don't know how many times within the industry or my career that I'm like, I'm done. I just want to do corporate. I don't want to have anything to do. But the music industry just brings you back. So that's why a part of me feels like I was born into it, because I feel it's a calling for me more than it is a job. More than it is a decision that I made. It's something that, I think God made me, like God put in me to do in the industry. So the NGO had two names. It changed names halfway through its term, so to speak. Initially, it was called Artists for a Free South Africa. So it was founded during the time of apartheid. And it was when, a lot of celebrities were trying to put their voice and lend their name to to the dismantling of apartheid. So this organization was founded by Ted Danson, Denzel Washington, Alfre Woodard, CCH Pounder, Blair Underwood, and the likes. So they were a group of actors who were really passionate about South Africa and what South Africa was going through at that time. And they wanted to play a role in making sure that South Africa becomes free. So, and then initially the organization was more in terms of just, awareness, and in terms of, trying to get to the right people to just kind of make the right type of noise to, to help get South Africa free. I joined the organization once South Africa was free, so to speak. So by the time I joined the organization, it had now changed to a new name because South Africa was free. You couldn't necessarily, continue calling yourselves artists for a new, for free South Africa. So then they called themselves an artist for a new South Africa. And they didn't want their job to be done just, now South Africa's free, what do we do? And let's leave them because they still have to rebuild. So our main role was then now every time an actor would have like maybe a film that they were working on, part of their contract would be that they would give a charitable film premiere that we would organize and people would pay money to go to the film premiere, and then all the proceeds from that would go to the organization. So we at that time were helping the Ex-Political Prisoners Foundation, which was founded by Amith Kathrada, and also the Nelson Mandela Foundation and any other organizations that that really needed a lot of help. I mean, Amith Kathrada was one of our advisory board members in terms of what South Africa or what the country needed at that time. And then obviously as time went by, through the years, different, the type of assistance that the country would need would be different. There was a campaign that they did with Carlos Santana where they did, HIV/AIDS funding and assistance in things like that. So, and I think it dismantled a couple of years ago, but I believe that they did a lot of work, and a lot of the times anybody that would be, and especially actors that would come to South Africa, they would kind of go through us, the organization, first, so that we can kind of give them a brief, so that number one, they're not caught making kind of silly comments of when can I ride on an elephant, so that they understand what Africa's really about versus what they've been taught wrongly, so to speak, and where they can actually help. Where it would make an impact. So for me, I believe that it really did play a big role in just trying to acclimatize, especially a lot of the political prisoners, and bringing them back into the country and bringing them back into society with their families and being able to survive, in the first couple of years coming back. So it did play a good role for that. I think for me, the biggest takeaway was that they never made me as a South African feel like I'm being helped, and for me, I think that's the biggest key to helping somebody. You must never make someone feel like a charity. It must always be that we're working together for the greater good of whatever it is that we're doing at that time, but not necessarily that here I come, I'm the savior and I'm going to help you and I'm going to make this. So for me, that taught me the greatest gift in terms of just how to be human. I mean, you would sit in a room with all these celebrities. I was 18 years old, and I think I got from there, I mean, aside from my father, but I got from there that they're just human beings, and all they want to do is give whatever they can give to give that. And there isn't any there wasn't a difference between me and them, or them and anybody else in South Africa. They were actually more at odd at me being South African than I would be at odd at them being these big actors in Hollywood. So for me, it was more about being human and treating people with humanity and not making them feel like they are being helped in any way, but that you're working together. I can't really necessarily pinpoint one specific thing, I believe that there's different, at different ages and different turns in life in general have just led me to, to who I am and, and what I do. But honestly, I will say maybe working at ANSA, Artists for New South Africa, and I was in matric. I matriculated, then I continued with the job, and then I was going to varsity, and I think that's when the creative bug hit me. And I was going to varsity. I was majoring in psychology, business psychology, one of the most boring of, of psychology classes, because you're basically teaching business people how to talk to each other, you know. Um, and the entertainment bug hit me, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to school for. This is my career. This is what I want to do. I want to be in the industry, and I'm going to make it somehow. And but at the same time, I wanted to come home, you know. So I was very fortunate. Through Answer, I met Peter Clady, who at that time was Hugh Masekela's manager. And literally, we were backstage, and I said, I want to come home. And he was like, okay, come home and you have a job. And that's like, that was the turning point in my career, you know, coming back and being, you know, the project manager for Joy of Jazz, you know. And at that time, we were doing Joy of Jazz in 8 out of the 9 provinces throughout the whole year. It wasn't just, you know, the Joy of Jazz in Johannesburg. So it was exciting, and coming into, you know, a country that I really didn't know anymore. I mean, I'd left when I was 6, and I'm coming back, and you know, I'm 21. So I didn't really, you know South Africa anymore. Well, I didn't know it like as an adult, and you know how to maneuver myself. But it was just one of the most exciting turning points in my life. I think in the beginning it's changed a lot through the years now. You know, for me coming back home, I felt that people were very closed, you know, and which was understandable. You know, South Africa for a very, very long time was like, you know, like a sheltered child who's not allowed to go outside to play with other children, who's always indoors, so they don't know what's going on out there in the world. You know, they're not exposed to, you know, to different cultures. They weren't exposed to, you know, to different people and different mind thoughts. So it was, for me, that was the biggest challenge, is like how my mind works, and that my mind worked based on the exposure that I had. So now having to encounter quite a majority of the people who aren't as exposed as I was, and you know, trying to maneuver through that. You know, for me it was a learning curve, but at the same time it was also a teaching curve for me. You know, I had to learn how to deal with different types of mentalities, different types of personalities that may not necessarily agree or be aligned to, you know, to my thought processes, being able to deal with that, but at the same time be able to expose them as well, to my thought processes, and you know, be able to accept each other for that. So for me that was a huge challenge, and I think I've grown in, you know, a lot in that sense. I have 2 daughters, and if my children were to tell me that, Mom, well, they do now, you know, I mean, they're both creative, but I think they're still young, so I allow them to want to be in it because they're still young. But I think when it gets to a point where it's crunch time and you've got to really choose what you want to do, and they still want to be in the music industry or in the creative sector as a whole, I will most likely, a lot of my advice would be on the negative, to say don't. It's very hard as a woman in this industry. Sheer is I think it's like a phenomenal in terms of the amount of women that worked at the company versus men. You know, it's very rare that you're going to have more than 50% of, you know, of the company, or at least 50% of the company is actually women. And it's actually the first time where I'm in a position where, you know, that it's actually quite weird because I'm not used to it. Majority of the time, I've always been the only woman. You know, it's either I'm one of 2 women in the company, or if I'm in a room, majority of the time, I'm the only woman. And, you know, unless you are, you know, there's a particular way you have to carry yourself. You can never let your hair down. You know, you can never, you know, be free, because you have to be in a particular type of personality or way and manner in which you carry yourself, so that you're not perceived as either, you know, soft or easy to get through, or, you know, someone that, you know, the guys can want to date, or, you know what I mean, where someone can see that, okay, this person is here and they're here for work and they're not here to, you know, to mess around with anybody. And those are challenges. And also it's going to be challenging for them to maneuver those instances when they do come across guys who feel that they can just sleep with them, or they can, this is how they're going to be able to get through the industry to do that. So you have to be really strong to be, to be a woman in the music industry. But I think we're fortunate now because, there's organizations like right now I'm a member of Women in Music, which is an international organization where you have a support system, you have a structure. When I started in the industry, we didn't have that. Women in music didn't exist. So at least now when you have that support structure, you have somewhere where you can go for relief, you can talk to somebody, and as well as for context, and as well as just to have that support to say, okay, we are women and we're in this industry and we're gonna run it, so I mean, and I think with me being in the industry, honestly, I would let my kids do it, but not without a lot of convincing that I feel like they're strong enough. They have to be really, really strong. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the knee-jerk reaction is like, would you let your kids go in the industry? No, But with thought, you're like, you know what? If your kids are strong enough and you're there to, to be that support structure and guide them, and they're willing to listen to you, then why not? Because you've got to be able to support, your children in whatever endeavors that they want to do, Because, I mean, honestly speaking, no one held me back. So who am I to hold somebody else back? People of gold, for me, failure is not failing. Failure is an obstacle. It is just a little bit of a hindrance in the road and in your path for you to be able to succeed. There is no road that is, that is paved, smoothly. Every road is going to have its, its potholes. It's going to have its, in the same way that you may have a road that has, that has a fork in it, and you've got to choose a different path. It does not mean that if you have chosen the wrong path, that you cannot come back and take the other path. Mistakes are there for lessons, not for you to be made to feel like you can't succeed in life. It's not going to be easy. The music industry is not for the faint heart. The entertainment industry is not for the faint heart. You do have to deal with a lot of negativity. But I think if you can have the strength within you and be that person who's positive for yourself, that's where you'll be able to persevere. And never give up. And don't allow anybody telling you that you can't when you know that you're capable and you can't. The most important thing is to find a strong support system within the industry of people who believe in what you're doing and who will be there. And being there doesn't necessarily mean that they're your financial backer or anything like that, but it's someone who will be there to advise, someone who can give you a contact, an email address, a phone number. Those things are very important to have, that kind of support structure, a phone call that you can pick up and say, my friend, this is what I need from you. Those are very key, and find yourself a mentor, and you'll find with that mentor, you'll find that maybe they failed and tried and failed and tried before they became who they were several times. And it's all about that journey and being able to have that story to tell and being able to build those relationships. And it's how you carry yourself throughout the industry that will make the biggest difference. I think that's the best I can do. No, and I don't think that there is a finding your purpose without wasting time. There's people who are 22 years old and, I would look at them and I'm like, wow, this child, to me it's a child, I'm 42. This child has everything together, they've got their house, their husband, their career, everything is in one perfect, wrapped up in a bow, and it doesn't mean me at 42 being who I am and where I am in life, and maybe that person is a little bit further, doesn't mean that I haven't found my purpose or I haven't gotten where I need to go. I think a lot of times we have our purpose, we just haven't admitted to ourselves that this is our purpose because we're perfectionists deep down, and we always want better. We always want to strive for better and better and better. And we compare ourselves too much to the next person versus being saying, okay, this is who I am and this is my journey. And in my journey, I am where I'm supposed to be, and I'm doing what I am supposed to be doing versus looking at, the 22-year-old driving a Ferrari. That's not me, I'm not a Ferrari driver. So I can't compare myself to that person. That's their journey, and I have to be happy for them for their journey, but then also stay in my lane in terms of what works for me and what makes me successful. If I was to chase that Ferrari, maybe that's when I would fall several times and never be able to get up because I'm chasing a dream that's not mine. So I don't think there is a waste in your purpose or your journey to get to your purpose. I think that, the purpose is, part of it is that journey, to get there. Even if you may have made that wrong start, like you were saying, that is part of that, that purpose for you to get to that end result. And there isn't an end result. I mean, the only end result is when the Almighty decides to take us. Other than that, we continue the journey. Biggest lesson I learned was act. I think we spend a lot of times contemplating and second guessing things that we want to do. So the biggest lesson that I got out of COVID was to act. Rather than to think about a lot of things. I'm not saying, people must just now go and think, act without thinking. But we think about what we want to do something, and then we'll second guess ourselves. No, but maybe when I have a little bit more money, or maybe I have a little bit more of an experience, maybe when I have, this A, B, C, D, E, then I can do this. Sometimes you just need to take that plunge and act on it and do it. And you don't know what, if it's going to succeed or not. And the majority of the time it will, because as long as you believe that this is, this is something that you want to do, if you can just act on it and then stop second guessing yourself, that is the biggest thing. For me, COVID taught me that, where, you spend years and years like, oh, I'd like to do this. Yeah, but, for me to do that, I need to be able to have 1, 2, 3 in place. And COVID I just sat at home because you had a lot of time to think, And I'm like, but why don't I just do it? If it didn't work out, didn't work out. But it doesn't hurt to try. And for me, that was the biggest lesson. Just act, stop second guessing what you are capable of being able to do, and actually just do it, because you are able to do it. You are capable. I'm happy that the world sees us as Africans. We've seen ourselves, we've known ourselves all this time, but the rest of the world has not seen us. We've always been taken as, little Africa. Now everybody wants a stake of this, of this little Africa, So for me, I'm happy that they see what we've been seeing all along. For me, that's the most amazing thing. For the fact that there is that recognition that a lot of the music that, the Americans and the Europeans are actually, been doing stems from, at some points, from, African music, and that recognition of, our dances, our culture. For me, it's just, it's incredible, that we're finally being seen for how we've seen ourselves all along. That's amazing. Well, I'm not sure if it's, if it's the world per se, but I would say my world in terms of, South Africa and my community. But, the gender-based violence for me is, something that really I feel affects, not only just, the person or the family that, that it has happened to, but it affects the whole of, South Africa and its society. If we want to put it to the world, who wants to come to a country where, they don't know if they're walking down the streets and they're going to be, killed or, or worse. So for me, that's something that I think the world needs to take a look at, and we need to figure out a way to stop it. And I think it's not only, in as much as it's South African, I think it's not only a South African, it's a big African problem that we need to look at, especially when all eyes are on us now. Yo, I just went blank. Not a book. I haven't been able to read a lot in the last few years because, with doing music supervisory, I'm literally reading, like right now, I'm reading three scripts, like for three different projects every day. So, like, I can't get a book in there, So, I can't remember a movie. And there was one that we watched not so long ago, but my memory, sorry. Yeah. Um, so listen, I'm in the music industry. I can't proclaim to say, I'm going to find the cure for cancer. But I do feel that music and the entertainment industry as a whole, creatives as a whole, are healers. They can heal our hearts, and sometimes I believe that they can't even heal ailments, because you know how this. Oh, maybe there's a saying: "Laughter is the best medicine." I believe that music can heal. It can heal you spiritually. I believe it can heal you mentally. And I do believe it can heal you physically. So for me, whatever role I can play, because for some, I was not blessed with the talent to be able to play a musical instrument, but whatever role I can play for those that need to get that healing through that music, then that's the role that I want to play. I think their mind, they're growing up in a very different time to me or you, where we weren't as exposed to so many different things, and we weren't like, in our days, if an album in the US came out, we're going to wait 6 months, before it comes out. So they've got the presence, they've got that thing of the presence, they have the access, that we didn't have. And I think a lot of people are not using that access, that, combining it with their mentality and their openness and their exposure, as effective as they could. I think the problem is that a lot of, my kids' generation is a me generation versus a we generation. And I think if they can, take what they have, what they have now, and we were a we generation, so if they can combine that, that access, that free mind, and and the opportunities, and combine it with the we generation mentality or thought processes to a bit, I think these kids they can just make this world such a better place. That's an interesting question, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the journey and whether you feel like, you've made it or not. And I mean, honestly, up until you've asked me this question and we've had this conversation, I would have partly said, no, I'm not. But, after this conversation, I can, without tooting my own horn or anything, but I can say, yeah, I am successful. I'm doing things that I love. I am one of the first, music supervisors in the country, in the continent. So there's that recognition in terms of what my job is and what my role is within the music industry. I am someone that, big industry artists look at to say, okay, Mpumi, can I pick your brain? Can I ask for your advice? I don't necessarily think that, they would ask that of just anybody. So, and I've got a good circle of family and friends that I'm supportive, and they're supportive of me. And I think for me that is a sign of success, because there's a lot of people who don't have all of that. So I guess I would say I am. I wish for gold for all the successes in the world, and I wish for you guys to continue to inspire and to continue to be a guiding light for your viewers and for anybody that would be watching, that is looking for that piece of inspiration, or is looking for that sign that says, I must move, I must act, I must, and I am, and that is, for me is one wish that I wish Gold can, continue to do, is to give that inspiration to their viewers, to say, I am and I can and I will. That's for me, it's most important wish for you guys. I don't know. I don't know where the future takes me in terms of whether I, want to branch out and do my own thing, or I want to continue, maybe not even working for Share, maybe for another company or anything like that. But wherever the journey takes me, I definitely know that I want to be, a very established and renowned music supervisor worldwide. And I think for me, when I say, okay, I've made it, is when I've now done like music supervisory for a blockbuster, Hollywood blockbuster film. Little girl from Africa who's done that. For me, that would be I can retire now, moment. But honestly, I'm not sure if I am the own my own business person. I think there's different people for different, for different roles in life. You know, if we're all meant to be business people, then who's gonna be the employee? You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily. I'm not saying I don't have the business acumen. I'm just saying I'm not sure if that's what I want. And I think that's okay as well. And I think it's important for Gold viewers to know that we're not all meant to be, the CEO of a company. There's some of us who can play very pivotal roles and make a mark, in our careers without ever having been that CEO of that company or the owner, so to speak. So I'm not sure if I'll ever branch out on my own in terms of just like, this is going to be my thing, but I don't know, it's not something it's something I've thought of, but it's something that's always been, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do, I just want to do what I want to do. I just want to do what I love, and not have to worry about overheads and, is the rents paid? Is is everybody's salaries paid? Is, the phone bill paid? I just want to do what I love, So I don't know if that's the journey I'm going to take, but who knows? So basically, as a music supervisor, I'm considered a middleman, but I'm a middleman in a bigger sense of the word. So I'm a middleman between film and television and the music industry. Those two worlds, in as much as they're creatives, or they're within the creative umbrella, they actually speak very different languages. So being able to now communicate and be that intermediate between those worlds, and place the music onto, a television or a film, being able to do all the clearances, doing, different spottings, like trying to find the right piece of music for the right scene. And then, in as much as, I ran away from legal as a child, having to do all the contracts, for the licensing and making sure that the filmmaker has the right clearances and for the usage of the music, and also advocating for the music industry and making sure that they are being paid fairly. So being that, that middleman between the industries and putting them together, that's the key role basically of a music supervisor. I think if they want to know about where to go to school, there's no school for music supervisory. But having legal background I think would be the strongest. And then also maybe obviously having a passion for music. You have to be able to listen to all kinds of music. People walk into my office, one day I'm listening to reggae, the next day I'm listening to heavy metal rock. So you can't, as a music supervisor, you can't say, I don't like that genre. You gotta be able to have that ear to hear anything and everything and see if it works for, for whatever it is your client needs. So yeah, I would love for people to want to be music supervisors, because I don't think we have enough. I don't think we really have any in the continent, honestly speaking. And I love a challenge. So yeah, I'd love, for someone to kind of make me think on my toes and be like, yo, this one's coming for my job. Let me let me pull up my socks, So yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's two different industries that speak different languages. So I think one of the biggest challenges is the lack of understanding of each other. You know, understanding that our film and television, especially I'll speak more in terms of film, but our film industry in the continent is still young. You know, they may be doing films for years and years, but in terms of, you know, from a financial, from a growth, from an exposure, it's still very, very young. So they don't have, you know, the Hollywood blockbuster budgets. And our music guys want those Hollywood blockbuster figures for their music, which, I mean, that's their value and that's how they see it, but it's their understanding of each other. At the same time, the film guys are like, yeah, but why so much? Forgetting that this is someone's bread and butter. You know, this is how they earn a living and how they're able to support their families. So it's having them be a little bit more understanding of each other. For me, that's become the biggest challenge. And also, you know, always having to try to maneuver with a client, especially a production company that has, you know, fallen in love with a song that they cannot get. And now you've got to, you know, get them to love another song, and it's not the same. It's like, you know, it's not it'll just never happen. So yeah, but I think for me the biggest challenge is having that mutual respect and understanding between the two industries. That's, you know, that has been the biggest challenge, especially within Africa. So I think for me there's two. The first one was very early on in my career. I approached a company and I said, can we do music supervisory for you? And they're like, nah, we've got this, right? And they went on, they did an, you know, amazing film based on the life story of an amazing man. And they got picked up by Sony Pictures in the US. And obviously the US is like, okay, so where's your paperwork? And, you know, Sony's like, no, actually you don't got this. So they had to come back to us. And it was like you know, working for a, like Sony Pictures in the US, you know, all the different requirements, which is far, far, far more than, you know, more complicated than, you know, an African film, and what kind of contracts and things that we had. I mean, there was a scene in that movie where they're singing a church song, you know, and I'm like, no, it's a traditional song. We sing it in church. We don't need to license. They're like, no, if it's a traditional song, give me the proof, you know. And unfortunately, South Africa, we don't have a lot of documented things, you know. So I had to go and do the research, go to a, you know, professor at Wits University and, you know, tell him the whole story and come with my research to say, okay, this thing is like this. And then he was able to write a letter, you know, from the University of Wits to say, no, this is a public domain song. So, but it was interesting to have to go through such stringent, you know, things that you know, that Sony required, and especially very early on in, you know, in the career. So I was prepared. I can do, you know, local production, and I can do an international production now. So that was for me one of the, you know, it was a hoorah in two ways. Like, you know, you did have to come back to me after all, and number two, being able to, you know, to fulfill what, you know, what international best practice was required. And most recently, I think would be my, you know, my favorite would be having worked on Blood and Water, which is on Netflix, and doing the music for that, and how successful Blood and Water was. And it's just, yeah, now it's like I've got everybody knocking down my door saying that they want to, you know, get their music played on Blood and Water too. But I think for me, that was actually one of the most exciting, complex projects, you know, doing Blood and Water, and having a, you know, a Netflix production, you know, behind my back. So it's like one step closer to Hollywood. So yeah, I think those two would be.
I love that. Before we go to the
I think with each and every person that I work with, I get something different. With Smoo, I got focus. You know, Smoo is one of the most focused guys that I know, and he's one of those guys who's like, "This is what I want to do," and it's either you're getting on the bus or you're gonna watch the bus leave. And you can't be on the bus and still wanting to be at the bus stop. It's like you gotta be 100% in or 100% out, because if there's any doubt, it's gonna leave you, and things are gonna go over your head. You're gonna miss it, and you're gonna just be lost. So he was one of the people that I learned a lot in terms of, how to be focused, and how to have a vision and go for it. I've learned so many different things from different people, but Spoo was one of those where that's one of the things that I learned. And I actually learned that with him, from a personal note, I learned that guys can actually be very neat. Because I'd gone to his house and I thought, so who lives here with you? Like, was your girlfriend? No, I live alone. I'm like, no, you can't have a house like this, and you live alone as a guy. Because, you're just used to guys being a bit messy. And so he's just like a very neat person. So that's something that was like, wow, an eye-opener. I mean, many moons ago, but yeah.
I would love to have you.
Me. I think I am my greatest asset. I think for me, my mind, my heart, like that's who I am, my soul. For me, that's what people should remember me for. And they should remember me for being that person who they can go to for emotional and mental support at all times. And yeah, that's it. I think for me is to remember that, number one, in order for a relationship to break down, it is a two-way street, and we must remember that it's not, it's never as cut and dry as it's the other person's fault and you had no role to play in it. And if there are children involved, just remember that those children should come first. Nothing should ever come in the way of your children's happiness, growth, and prosperity, regardless of how you may feel about the partner. And I think communication is the key, and patience. Being able to persevere through difficulties of the breakup, and still be able to move over to the other side to grow and become good co-parents. And sometimes being good friends. It may not necessarily be possible for all times, but I think that's what we should all strive for. I think it's very important. One of my things is that I cannot be enemies with an ex, because before I became, a partner or lover to you, I was your friend. So how do I become enemies with a friend? So I think for me, you move back to the friendship space and you keep the relationship going, especially for the sake of your kids. That's the most important. And be patient, and all will be revealed and will come out right, as long as we remember what the number one goal is. It's our kids. Okay, so the things that I believe that you need in life is, it's very simple. It's like the movie, eat, pray, love. So you need to eat everything that you can. Eat, and when I say eat, I say take knowledge. Eat everything. Experience everything. Never say no unless it's, something that would harm you or other people. But never say no to an experience. At least have said, I have done this once. So absorb everything. Learn as much as you can. And pray. Be in spirit, be spiritual. If you're not a prayer, but be spiritual. So you've got to love yourself, love humanity, love your family, love the people who are around you, and love what you do. I remember a teacher telling me when I was very young, say the day you wake up in the morning and you hate waking up to go to work, then that's the time to quit your job. So it's very important to love what you do, in as much as you love everything else around you. My name is Mpumi Phillips. I'm a music supervisor at Share Publishing, and you're watching Gold. You're watching Gold with King Nee. My name is Mpumi Phillips. You're watching Gold with King Nee. Go for gold.